Welcome back. We've got a great podcast topic for you today. It's how to make at least $100,000 in the next 100 days. Adjust accordingly. Some of you obviously can make $100,000 in a lot shorter period of time. But the ideas that we're going to be sharing with you, the plan that we're going to be giving you over the next 4 days is going to be something that you can scale up or scaling down just depending on what your business plan calls for. But I want to start out by reading something to you guys, which is a basic law of physics.
That's right. It is Newton's first law of motion, also known as the law of inertia, and it states that an object at rest stays at rest, and an object in motion stays in motion with the same speed and same direction unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. Now, why are we bringing that up, Tim?
Well, the bottom line is more motion, more action leads to more motion, more action. And inaction leads to obviously a lot of, no action, no results. Right now, a lot of you are experiencing really, I think, an emotional quagmire. You're focused way too much on headlines, way too much on politics, way too much on the headlines from this and the headlines from that. You don't have enough. Essentially, you're not building momentum, and the lack of action and the lack of momentum is going to lead to a very bad, next 6 to 12 months and maybe even several years for you. Everything that you want in the future is dependent on the actions that you take today. And so if you find yourself, and I want you to be introspective about this, think about, be honest with yourself. If you don't like your present reality with regards to your finances, regards to your physicality, regards to whatever, that's a direct reflection of the decisions that you made and the actions, or frankly, the lack of actions that you took maybe yesterday, 6 months ago, or maybe even 12 months ago, etc. You guys get the point? So the reality that you're living in now is a direct reflection of the decisions that you made in the past. So what we want you to do is realize that regardless of what's going on in the world, regardless of what's going on in all these, the headlines and all the drama that's all seems to be circulating everywhere you turn, you don't have to participate in any of it. You can block all of it out, and you can decide to make this the start of what will be the beginning of a very long-term, ever-increasing, wonderful results for you and your family, financially, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, educationally. You don't actually have to participate. I'm going to share with you guys a story. Julie and I were at an auction, and this was a while ago. And Jesse James, you guys remember Jesse James, the guy who was married to, who was he married to?
Sandra Bullock, I think.
Sandra Bullock. He was selling off a vintage bicycle collection that he had. This was in Long Beach. And he had this bicycle that I wasn't really much of a collector, and Julie wasn't either, but we went with a friend because we thought it'd be interesting. And so, as a side story, he was clearing out of Long Beach. He had just broken up with Sandra Bullock, and he was moving to Austin. So he had a ton of stuff that he was selling. So we went up to a shop, and it was in Long Beach, and we, bid on this bike, and we ended up winning it. Now, why did we buy this bike when we weren't bicycle collectors? Because this bike in particular was made during the height of the Great Depression. And it was this bike, and it was restored, yes, but in its original condition, or rather its original design, showed that this thing was an insanely complicated, expensive bike to have purchased. It was an Elgin.
I think it was a Blackbird or something like that.
I think you're right.
It was really pretty too.
Yeah, it was crazy. The details on this thing are nuts, and we keep it at our cabin in Murphy. So it was made in, I think it was 1929 or 19 something like that. I don't remember. But the gist of it is even like if you'd seen all the extra detail, it was a little boy's bike. So it had this little toolbox that was built into it. It was this beautiful light that was beautiful. The whole thing was not something that you would ever have guessed that would have been made during what would have been historically one of the worst financial times in the history of America. And yet here it was, this beautiful bike that some, family bought for their little son during what would have been, again, some of the worst days financially in the history of America. And that really, meant something to me. And we bought this during 2007 and 2008 when, the housing crisis was going on. So here is the housing crisis going on. Everyone's talking about the sky is falling. And here's a little message from the past saying that, yes, even though maybe this, the worst times in many families' lives were indeed happening during the Great Depression, there were still people that were able to really spoil their children with these amazing toys. And this amazing bike was, I think, essentially a little message from the past, letting Julie and I know that we don't have to participate in what at that time was, the great housing collapse and in the Great Depression when the bike was made. You guys get it? So that was a little message from the past to us, saying that even though it seems like the sky is falling, there are still people out there that were still able to make the most of whatever was going on during that time. Maybe the guy that bought that or the family that bought that for the little boy, maybe he was a doctor, maybe he was a real estate agent. Maybe he was something, he obviously was able to produce a product or a service that other people were willing to pay for during the worst times in historically, financial times of America. You guys getting what I'm getting at here? We're in probably going to be this long sort of strange, bifurcated time where people are trying to figure out, is the sky falling, or are we just in this transitory time where we're going to be discovering this new level of, humanity through the advent of AI and all the amazing things that AI does with healthcare and all this other stuff. Julie and I are of the mindset that we are essentially all crossing this bridge together. And the other side of this is going to be new realms of human existence, which will make today's best situations and best ways of living, I think, pale in comparison.
Very well said. And whoever that dad was who bought that bike for his son certainly shared your belief that the future will be better than the present.
That's right. And that's what we need you guys to understand as well. And the best way for you to unplug is to literally unplug. Go media free. Clear your mind from all the negative inputs that are surrounding all of us. And really realize that your tomorrow, can be so much better than your today. It's all dependent on the momentum you build. It's all dependent on the actions that you take. So if you don't like your present reality, kind of drawing a circle around this, it's because of the decisions you made in the past. So I have a suggestion for all of you. Start making different decisions today. And that's what the theme of the podcast for the next few days are all going to be about.
Exactly. And maybe put a poster of Newton in your office to remind yourself that a body, that would be you, in motion tends to want to stay in motion. All right, so it is time to launch yourself into success in this quarter, with the next 100 days being the most successful you've ever experienced. With rates decreasing and inventory increasing, you're poised to roar for the rest of 24. And don't wait until the calendar flips to get into action. Don't say, well, next year I'll try better. I'll do it next year. Let's just wait and, the next 6 months. No, we're going to show you how on this podcast series, starting with today, part 1, which is going over some specific rules for you to follow, for you to implement to be successful, earning at least $100,000 in the next 100 days. Now, why did we choose that amount? Well, the average sale price in the United States is currently $412,000, which makes the average commission about $12,000. And let's take off 20% of expenses, and that'll get us to about $9,600 net per deal. So you need about 10 deals to make $100,000 in 100 days. Now, everyone listening to this podcast can 100% accomplish that goal, assuming that they follow the plan. Now, note to self, Tim gave you a prequel to this earlier. If your average sale price is not $412,000, but closer to $1 million, well, then you only need 5 deals. Go you to make $100,000 in the next 100 days. Adjust accordingly. Maybe following this plan will get you an additional $100,000. Maybe you're already 100% on track, and you're going to implement the things that we talk about to do it easier, faster, and better.
So if we were coaching, I'll tell you right now, the first thing we'd do, if you were a new coaching client, we'd go through all your leads, and we would make you prove to us that your leads were actual leads opposed to just names in a database, right? So if it were a seller, we want you to tell us the seller's motivation. Do they have to sell or do they want to sell? What do they think the price is worth? This would be an active listing, or this would be a listing lead that you were chasing. We'd go through all your leads with a fine-tooth comb, and we would help you figure out which ones are the ones that are most likely to transact with you. And I'll tell you what happens all the time. When you have this conversation with an agent, they might have, I have 30, 40, 50, 100 leads, or they have a big CRM with, more than that. Well, you go through all of it, and then you put, you figure out, okay, this is, maybe I have 15 leads. All right. So the 15 leads you have, real leads that you were really putting a lot of effort in, how many of them are sellers? Okay. It's going to be half. All right. How many of those sellers have to sell? Well, go you. It's actually 7 or 8 of those sellers actually have to list. And then what we do is we drill down, we'd find the actual, motivation. This one's got to buy a house. They want to resell, but these, guess what? 6 are willing to build. Well, now you're going to go focus on the builders. But the point is some of you, many of you, might already actually have enough leads, if you really took the time to pre-qualify all of them, to meet or exceed your particular financial goals for the rest of the year. But if you have too many leads, if you're, essentially dripping on too many people and you're not actually calling them, pre-qualifying them, really get at the root of what their motivation is, you're not going to actually get the most of the number of leads you have, because the ones that actually aren't going to transact with you are covering up the really good ones. And this goes back to what Julie and I are always asking all of you to do. the most successful agents we've ever coached personally have the fewest number of leads, because in order for a lead to be considered a lead by these most successful agents, that lead has to truly be qualified for that agent to give them their attention.
Well, that's exactly right. And when I'm talking to my private coaching clients, one of the things that we do at the top of every call when we're doing on track, ahead, or behind is we look at their leads.
Describe that.
Okay, so when we start a call, we're looking at we are comparing where are you at on track, ahead, or behind versus what your goal is. So let's say that your goal was to make $500,000 this year. We're coming up on the half of the year, adjust accordingly, depending on when you're listening to the podcast, of course. You should be about 250. Well, you've got to drill down even further. Maybe you've only closed 100, but you've got 150,000 in pending and you're actually on track. So when I talk to somebody, for example, like Kristen Hawley in Fort Worth, Texas, she sends me her spreadsheet, which reflects her whiteboards, and we have what is closed, what is pending, what is coming soon, and what are the value of her leads in terms of buyers and sellers. And we can quickly calculate at a glance, because she also color codes everything, is she on track, ahead, or behind? Currently, she is running ahead. Why? Because she tracks all of this. And now let me be clear. These are leads. These are indeed embedded in her list of contacts in her database. That's true. But she's not looking at everybody in one big bucket and calling all of her contacts leads. You see the difference? These are people where if I call her at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, Kristen, what's the deal with so-and-so that lives on 123 Texas Street? She'll say, here's why they're moving. Here's their motivation. Here's their time frame. Are they a buyer or a seller or both? When is my next meeting? Because we track next actions. And she can tell you down to a penny if she's on track, ahead, or behind.
Well, also, like if you, for example, have some of our coaching clients and our listeners have a lot of listings, but if you might have a lot of lot listings, or you might have a lot of, vacation homes and things that, let's be honest, are going to be harder to sell in a higher interest rate environment. So what we'll do is we'll go through all of your listings and we'll make you, again, prove to yourself and to your coach that is indeed going to be a viable seller.
Exactly. Okay. So for example, I'm glad that you said that, because that's one thing that Kristen and I are doing actually practically right now. She has 3 listings for me to take a look at. These are the ones that have been a little bit more frustrating to sell. We're going to do a deep dive. Are they competing against new construction? Do the sellers actually have to sell? And what we're doing is, if you've got to have 10 actives at all times, but 3 of them are a little iffy, maybe the sellers don't really care if they sell or not. They don't count. Okay, we spin those off into a different whiteboard, into a different spreadsheet. We're not breaking up with them. We're still giving them all of the time and attention that they deserve. However, they're no longer counting in the 10 that she's got to have at all times.
So you and I, of course, did this when we sold real estate. And Julie and I would typically have to have, when we increased our sale price, we had to have fewer listings. But let's just say on average, we had to have about 15 to 20 listings. For us to meet or exceed our financial goals. We had big financial goals. And what we would do, and it was painful to go through it, is we'd have to put a star by the one you knew you could actually sell. And sometimes if you'd have like 20 listings, but only 10 of them would have stars by them, then you'd have to look at the ones that don't have stars by them. And you'd have to ask yourself why the hell you took it in the first place,
Yes, what's really going on with those listings?
And here's the other thing you discover. Some of the ones with no stars by them, in other words, they actually aren't, they're overpriced. The seller isn't that motivated. It also turns out that seller is a big time suck. That one who you basically shouldn't have taken in the first place, because let's say it's a vacant lot in a subdivision that nobody wants to ever buy in, and the lot's really expensive and they won't lower the price, whatever. That's the same seller that's constantly bothering you, that's going to take all of your time and energy away from A, looking for more really great sellers, or B, giving the attention to the existing sellers that will actually transact. You guys get it? This is the whole point of coaching, but these are the conversations you need to have if you really want to build momentum, because that time suck seller is actually, or buyer, by the way, they're going to make it so that the other sellers, who are the great sellers, might get frustrated with you and fire you. And now that actual time suck seller is adversely affecting your momentum.
Not that ever happens, right? So yes, proof that we actually did sell real estate for a living. Yes, and there almost always is that correlation between the time suck and the less motivated, and that ratio of probably also being overpriced. So it's all about knowing your client and knowing the situation.
Julie just said something kind of funny inadvertently, and it is true. The sellers that are the most motivated, generally speaking, take the least amount of your time, because you don't have to spend a lot of time trying to, coerce them into doing the right thing to get their damn house sold.
Because they're motivated.
The ones that are the least motivated take the most amount of time almost always, because frankly, they don't want to listen to what you say, and they want to, argue with you and challenge you on everything. You need to, Mr. Seller, it actually is not okay that you have an army of raccoons living in your attic. I know you've named them all, and they're all really cute, and they like to come down, clean off your dishes at night that you left in the sink. But and guess what? We had a cellar exactly like this.
You were going to say that.
I'm not making that up. We honestly had a cellar like this. I don't want to, give too much detail, but the gist of it was, is she had a dog door, and this dog door would attract raccoons every night. She started leaving food out, and the raccoons would come in. Guess what? And eat it every night. And I tried to explain to her after she told us this, after we took the listing, that probably would adversely affect our ability to sell the house. And did she listen to us right away? No, but she eventually did as her motivation increased.
Exactly. We could go on about that listing. I can almost tell you the address. Okay.
Yep.
So yes, it comes down to knowing the situation. Now, once you have followed this plan, remember, circling back to at least 100,000 in your next 100 days.
It is worth noting that was an expensive house.
Yes, it was. I remember doing an open house since you opened that can of worms or that dog door. I remember doing an open house, that raccoon door. And I was at the dining room table looking something up, and her outside cat, had drug in a blue jay and was murdering it underneath the dining room table.
During an open house.
During an open house. It was horrible. But if you recall, we spun that into, maybe it's time to replace the shag carpets, not just because they're shag carpets and had really nice hardwood floors under, but now they're stained in bird blood, and they're wondering if we actually sold that house. Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. And that was an expensive house. That was in the neighborhood. That was probably, actually at the time, I think it was one of the most expensive listings.
Yes.
It was an old beach wall. Those of you guys are in Central Ohio that are listening to us right now.
Big brick colonial with a nice porch on the back.
And it was on West Beachwold, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
That's right. All right. So again, once you've done this the first time, you can lather, rinse, repeat. Existing coaching clients, longtime listeners, you know about lather, rinse, repeat. Learn the skill and repeat it. There will be absolutely an influx of people buying or selling real estate in the next 100 days. We know this based on increasing mortgage applications, as well as increasing inventory to sell or for sale. I automatically think for you to sell. The only question is whether you will be the one to list and or sell the next homes in your market. So decide now. You can decide while you're listening to this podcast series, when will you start your 100-day sales streak? Chart it on your calendar. Count work days versus non-work days. It doesn't have to be 100 consecutive days, but it does need to be 100 work days. You'll break down now and then, and you may need some other plans ready on your calendar, so adjust accordingly with your days.
All right, so what did she mean by that? This, by the way, this drill down is all available in the Real Estate Treasure Map, which you get for free when you join Premier Coaching. And again, when you're joining Premier Coaching, make sure you go directly, and it's right in the first section. Go and download the Real Estate Treasure Map. It is a fill-in-the-blank business and life plan. It's what, frankly, a lot of you have been searching for, because honestly, when you guys are completing the Treasure Map, it's going to be a lot of work for some of you, because the design of the Treasure Map is intentional in that we want you to actually get in to know your numbers. We want you to actually do the math. We want you to know your sell price, your average commission. We want you to know your net versus the gross. And I'll scale up on the Treasure Map idea. You guys should be using, I think it's called Monarch Financial. Isn't that what it's called, Julie?
Yes.
Monarch Money. Monarch Money. I just looked. Use Monarch Money and take your Treasure Map numbers after you've done your homework and plug it into Monarch Money. It's really a really phenomenal financial organization app, monarchmoney.com. But in any event, get the Treasure Map done, and that's going to tell you your real estate magic number. That's going to tell you everything that you need to know about your personal and your professional expenses. That's going to make some of you feel such an enormous, unbelievable sense of relief and sense of control, because a lot of what we feel as far as the frustration and the fear is because we don't have the information. Our subconscious mind is trying to solve problems where we know we need to solve the problem, but we don't really know what the problem is to solve. When you do your Real Estate Treasure Map, when you actually know your numbers and you have them right in front of you, here's what you're going to discover. 99% of you, this is what you're going to discover. You need 5 listings at all times. That's it. That's going to be your Real Estate Treasure Map results. That's going to be your business plan. And when you have 5 listings at all times, you're going to sell an average of 1 to 2 homes per month. Maybe more, and not just listings, but you might sell 3 homes per month. Adjust accordingly depending on your sale price. That is going to give you an enormous sense of relief. So you get the Treasure Map for free. And one of the other things that's part of the Treasure Map, which got me thinking about this, was when you are creating your next 100-day plan, you want to get a big calendar It's okay if you use a digital one, but we are always advocates of putting things up on walls, a dry erase board or whatever. And then mark on the calendar the days you're going to be working and the days you're not going to be working. The days you're going to be working, put a big green dollar sign. And the days you're not going to be working, whatever. And then you are going to look at your calendar. You're going to know the days you're going to be working. On the days you're going to be working, you're going to have a minimum standards of what you should be doing every single day. And that's what we're going to be talking about over the next 4 days. And it's also lined out in the Real Estate Treasure Map, which you get for free. Just go to premiercoaching.com or scroll down below and click the link below. And yes, that does include a daily semi-private coaching call. So if you want to build true momentum, obviously follow this plan that we're giving you and then join Premier Coaching. It doesn't cost you anything for the first 30 days. So take full advantage of that right away, premiercoaching.com.
All right, so the 4 rules to commit to before you accept the $100,000 in 100 days challenge. So we're ramping them up nicely so they have a moment to digest the rules. And then we're going to get into exactly what to do over the next 3 days. So the rules to follow are pretty simple. A, you will have to actively contact both people you already know as well as those you don't know. People you know are past clients, people in your sphere of influence, and agent referrals. By and large, that's known as your database.
Should we tell them this now so they don't have to figure it out on day 4?
What's that?
We're actually asking you to pick up the phone and having real conversations. So when we say contact, you can initiate the conversation digitally, text or whatever, WhatsApp, whatever, but we want you to pick up the phone and have a phone call. The phone call is going to make all the difference. It is 100,000% more effective and powerful than anything you can do digitally. Julie and I and you, all of you, get texts from people. What text allows you to do is ignore the text for a long period of time, right? I mean, that's the standards of operation for texting and anything digital is not, there's no urgency with it. Whereas if you're picking up the phone and you're having a conversation with somebody, you're going to get more results quicker. You're going to have more obviously effective levels of communication. You will build momentum quicker. You will make more money. And
your skills will increase too because you'll be practicing with real people. So take your pulse. Are you willing to speak with both people that you already know as well as some people you don't already know? Are you willing to do both in order to earn your at least 100,000 in 100 work days? I bet you are. So let's move on to B. You should know where your business came from last year and last quarter and keep doing what has worked. Get rid of what's not working. Commit to doing more of what has worked. So for example, let's say you had 5 transactions from repeat clients last year, but you didn't actually have a system to speak with your database regularly. Well, how many more repeat clients could you create this year or this 100 days by being more drilled down on that source of business, by using a real script, by going about it systematically, by setting it as a goal, by putting it in your calendar? It's not nothing, right? All right, point number C, or rule number C, you must be willing to do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level. If you keep doing what you're doing, you'll keep getting what you're getting. Now, for some of you, that's awesome. But if you want more and faster, you've got to go to the next level financially. Well, you've got to go to the next level with your skills, your discipline, and your consistency. That's usually when people sign up for coaching. And D, last but not least, you must ask for help when you need it. Don't waste time reinventing the wheel, sampling, trying things out, taking surveys on Facebook. Get help from our Harris certified coaches who all, by the way, sell real estate for a living, and join Premier Coaching so you can have the daily support that you're craving in this business. They are here for you. Don't do it alone. And by the way, all of our coaches have actually followed this plan.
Oh, of course. They absolutely have. I mean, that's a great way for us to start this 4-day series. So your homework from today's podcast is obviously to join Premier Coaching. Just scroll down below and click the link below to join Premier Coaching. And by the way, if you want the notes from today's podcast or any of our past podcasts, the only way to get those notes is going to be to join our free newsletter. It's harrisrealestatedaily.com. harrisrealestatedaily.com is our free newsletter, so make sure you join. And you can click the link below, or you can just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, and we'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.